The last part we saw here, I would very much like to know, how do you actually measure the success? It seems like a very good program you have put together, but the different part is always, of course, to measure or to make the success measurable. Any indications of that?
May I?
Sure.
Yes. On a technical level, in terms of theory, we're using the Kirkpatrick scale. On a practical level, we are collecting quite a lot of information during the training. We have also surveys that are being up in front, and we see the change of when they come back, how does those surveys change? There's interviews being done with the candidates. There's interviews done with the people who interact with the candidates, and that's the important part. So if this gentleman participated, Tony was part of the program, but Tony is interacting with Søren, then one thing is nice what Tony thinks, but what I really need to do is ask Søren, has there been any change? And those interviews are being conducted. More so, there's also a PhD that's associated with the program that's being written as we're working through. So we'll expect to have this validated scientifically within I think there's another year and a half pending that result. But a lot of things are being picked up as we go along. Some of it is handled also in interviews. So I believe that the number of measuring points that we have put together gives us a reasonable amount of information to say that we're actually making a difference. Thank you.
Next question.
It's actually a question to both Maersk Drilling and Maersk Training Center and Dong Energy. You are addressing these issues from, as far as I see it, from two different angles. And we know that when you're out there on the rig, we have the OEM, which is basically the rig owner's OEM, who have the overall responsibility. And we have the company rep, who is actually wanting to get his well drilled. And in order to do so, he has all his service companies, etc., which doesn't have any direct, let's say, contractual links to the, let's say, OEM employed by the rig owner. So where are you in the Maersk training program addressing this complexity so that, let's say, everybody, and particularly the company rep, understand his role and responsibility in this context? And that goes also for Dong's program.
I can say that the company reps are invited. If we have a rig that is working for example, Statoil, Dong, whatever, then they are invited. We can, of course, not force the company to send their company rep. But if they show up, and luckily they do very often, then you have this interaction, and they actually discuss it, and they can see, they can feel it, their roles into this. So it is a matter that we actually, in this training, we actually put them as far away as possible in an office where they have this information they will find in the real world, and then they have to step into the driller's cabin and take decisions very, very fast. And there you have, let's say, in the feedback session, then the OIM, the senior tool pusher together with the company rep, then they can discuss, yeah, but did you had all the information when you stepped in and took the decision? Did I back up your decision? And then it is through the feedback session that we discuss that. And everyone is different people, also company reps, so someone is very dictating and someone is maybe too little dictating. So we can't put everyone on the same line here.
Good. Yeah, on behalf of Dong. I think I mentioned briefly that one of the reasons why we want to go away from this drilling supervisor element over to the company representative was to try to clarify his C2 duty as the client's representative on site. There's no discussion about the role of Maersk running their own yard, and there's no discussion about the third parties working on your soil, reporting into the collective work that's done on the rig. No doubt the communication between management on the rig is the biggest success factor, I think. And that goes through long relationship issues where also between a tool pusher and an OEM and a company rep there has to be trust. Because that's when you have the open dialogues, and that takes time. We're working with Maersk Giant for 3 years now, and we can just see the extreme explosion in cooperation. It just takes time. But I think we have defined our company rep role to be a C2 person. We're going to see that we are given what we're paying for.
Soren, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well. For me, it's a vital point you're touching there, Finn, because I think the company rep, and I think that was one of the things that came out of our Macondo group as well, was when we started looking at the bow ties, the ones that we were in control of and the ones that the client was in control of, there was a lot of areas where we could say we have to rely on the client. So we would like to start that verification process towards the client as well. One of the things that we're going to do, and is, as Tony says, we're going to invite the company reps. So unfortunately, we cannot force them. I would have loved to be able to do that, but we cannot do that. But where we do see company reps attend, I think, and it's fair to say, Tony, that we do see a lot of value from that, because we have to realize that the company reps, even though it's our well control manual, and the senior tool pusher, and then subsequently the OIM is in charge of the unit, the company rep has a big influence on the decisions being taken in a situation like this. And again, I would love if we could force our clients to send their company reps, but unfortunately we can't. But we are in a dialogue, and as Tony says, we do see quite a high number of company reps attending our training. And I think one of the successes we had was a company rep from a company, not Dong, that was, I think he was changing place with the tool pusher, yeah? And he was going through the training for 1.5 hours, something like that. Came out absolutely sweaty. And he just went back to his company and said, this is what we're going to do. So obviously, the telltale is also important, that the company sees that the value is in the training as well. But I think you're touching on something very important here, and that's our ability to verify the parts of the bow ties we're not in control of.
Okay. Ulrich, would you like a turn?
It would be a very brief statement saying that what we really try to focus on is the authenticity of the leadership role, so that almost regardless of what's being pushed against you, you have the capability to react in a professional manner. And you can be woken up in the middle of the night, and it may be a big thing, it may not be, but you have to execute leadership right here and there. So focusing on the individual and giving the capability to control that situation is very important.
So I'll also add a little add-on, which is not so much about the company rep, but I didn't touch upon that in my short presentation. The fact that we have the center built up as we have now, the Mosaic Center, also, and the moving on to the electronic crisis management handling means that we can do crisis management training in what I would refer to as a 720 degree, because we have the ability to train the people at the unit. They're in that room at the same time as we can train our crisis management in the second line. They can be in Svendborg, or they can be sitting anywhere in the world and have a video link into the training center, and we can muster in Copenhagen at the third line and do the training, all in real time, all in a situation that is not a thought of situation, in the sense that the well-controlled scenarios we have are all scenarios that's being seen and being lived out there in the real world. So we can do actually crisis management training in a real time, and I think that's a big add-on as well. And that also involves, of course, the company rep, because the companies do have, it's a little bit different, the setup across the globe, but in most cases, the predominant, the second line is the client's, offices. So we can do that training as well. I think that's an important add-on to the setup.
Okay, great. We've got time for a couple more questions before we stop for lunch. Looking into the gloom, and fantastic.
Just due to lack of questions, I will actually ask this one, which is a more general term in the perspective of the headline of the conference here. And maybe the only one to answer it is probably Dong, who is the only E&P company present at STRACE right now. But I'm from Rambøll. My name is John Sørensen, and we are an engineering company. We are one of many service companies who are inspired by Jim from Chevron this morning here, one of these adopted or not own children that will arrive on some platforms once in a while. I think what he showed this morning with 25%, approximately a quarter of the manning on any installation will be from the oil company. I think that's what you see in the industry in general. There'll be a certain amount of company representative on installation, and a lot of people are actually arriving forth and back, and some of them from core teams and not from core teams. However, to my question now, just having a thought about this, we know for a fact that any oil company with a certain respect for itself will have a CEO who takes safety seriously. And they will have a cultural program and some behaviors they try to put into the company and any people who will be working for them. But a relatively large share of the people available on any installation is from other companies that will arrive forth and back on the installation. And actually also by your presentations where you're sharing the experience here, or I should put it the other way, are we introducing a risk factor by not trying to align cultural and behavior between oil companies and for actually people visiting installations frequently or once in a while? Because anytime you visit the installation, you'll be into a new culture with different forms, different expectations, different culture and different behavior on that specific installation. Couldn't that maybe be introduced or reduced by having a closer cooperation from the oil company side on, you would say, the cultural part? So it's a very philosophical question, actually. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that part.
Just quickly, one element we have introduced in Dong now is the e-learning system, where we have an introduction package people have to go through and pass before they actually can go to the rig. It's meant to be a way of telling them our expectations, telling them our culture in a broader term, but being sure that they know our expectations, they know our goals, the KPIs. So we started that, and that upcoming programs in Denmark will have an e-learning system to it, the same as Maersk has to their people going to their rig. So I think we're trying to sell our culture, to sell our expectations. I think that's what I can say to that question.
Okay. Would any of the other speakers like to jump in?
Well, we have the same requirement. I mean, it's about the culture. We have to make sure that people arriving at our units are trained in the sense that they know our values, our systems, and as Magnus says, the success factors of being on board. And we have a requirement to do that. So you can argue, are we successful in doing it or not? To a certain extent, we can always improve. But I think we're successful in the sense that people will know what we stand for and what our rules and what our regulations are when they're on board our units. And I think that is something that goes on across on all installations in the oil and gas industry. And certainly we have an expectation from our clients that this is exactly what we're going to do. And there are also expectations from different authorities across the globe that we do have such a system that we make sure that we try to teach people into our values and our systems. And obviously it's a win-win, because if people are well trained and know exactly what to do when they're on our units, we don't need to spend so much time on doing that specific part of the introduction. So we can concentrate on the body system and giving them the practical introduction into our units. But whether we're successful or not, we can always be debated. Yeah.
Okay, we got one quick question before we stop for lunch. Gentleman here.
Well, this is not a question, this is more intervention, I would say. In our company, we had 4 or 5 years ago a secretary who died from a fall on a stairway. And just last Friday, we had a guy got unconscious from dropping from a stairway. And I don't feel confident with you guys standing there with the back to a drop of 0.5 meter. So, to be honest, so this is intervention. I would ask you to get a little bit closer to the middle, because it could happen.
Okay.
So, that was it. Thank you.
On that note, I'll say thank you very much for the intervention, and we have an hour's break now for you to see the exhibitors, and finally, of course, a round of applause for 6 really excellent presentations to kick the day off.